Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Heath mini masterclass. Today we're going to talk about scene filtering for DLive and Avantis. Some people get very confused. There are a lot of dots, but I think once you see how it all works, it's actually quite simple. So we're going to take a look at that. As always, you can chime in on the chat with your questions, or feel free to open your mic temporarily and ask a question. I'm going to try something different today. I normally just do these all in PowerPoint, so it's very controlled and looks nice and whatnot, but I felt that this one required some live action, so I'm going to go to an overhead camera and do it in real time. And so you all can let me know if this is better or worse. And here we go. So because I'm going to have to turn around and face the other way, I'm gonna switch my microphone, and because I love you all so much, I'm gonna do something I hate doing, and that's wear a headset. So bear with me 1 second, and I'm going to switch around to the other side. So here's my view of the screen. And hopefully you can all hear me just fine on there. These things just do not fit me well. So we're going to talk about scene filtering. It's a very powerful tool in DLive and Avantis, and it allows us to recall combinations of settings. The most simple and traditional version of this would just be to save every setting and recall every setting, but that's kind of boring, and it kind of limits us in what we're going to do. So whether you're on DLive or Avantis, you're going to go into the scenes menu. On a DLive, it's over here in the rubber button, but on Avantis, it'll be along the left side, but same thing. So we've got 500 scenes to work with here. They're part of our show file. The scenes in our consoles are very comprehensive, so you can do things that you can't do on other systems. Of course, scenes include all of the audio style data, your patching, your EQ, compression, those kinds of things, but they also contain a lot of workflow information, such as your soft key assignments and your fader placement on the surface and those kinds of things that you may not expect. So first thing that you need to do when working with scenes is to store a scene. So you're going to want to, set up your mixer as far as you want. I tend to, do 10 minutes or so of work and then save a scene, and then continue for another 10 minutes, and then continually update. Much the same as you would when you were typing a document. You would do, what do they say? Save early, save often is the term there. Sorry, I just saw I got a little bit of glare. Let me fix that for you. Hopefully that's better. So we're going to store a scene just by touching an empty slot and hitting store. It's just that simple. You'll notice that when you do, you get a confirmation on the bottom of the screen. You also get the green check mark on the right side of the slot there. That is the most important thing. If you don't have a green check mark, you do not have scene data, and that could really ruin your day. So once you've stored it, you can touch the name box up here and give it a name, and we'll just name this David for some reason. And that has stored every setting available in the scene system. If I wanted to recall every setting, I could just push go and it would recall every setting. But as we stated, often that's not what we want to do. So we can limit what the scene is going to do by applying a recall filter. It's important to note that the recall filter is separate from the data in the scene. So once I put on a filter, it acts as an overlay. I don't need to restore the scene to include the filter. I can alter the filter without altering the scene data, and I can alter the scene data and store over the scene without altering the filter. So you can go either way with that. They work in tandem, but they are not within one another. So this is the part that tends to intimidate people a little bit. Yes, there are a lot of dots. I call them Skittles. They look like Skittles to me, especially because depending on what their function is, they could be different colors. In here, in scene filters, they are the red ones. And it really is a lot more simple than it looks. Basically, we are looking at a grid similar to the patch bay that shows us every parameter within a scene. Right now, everything is gray. That means that those parameters are unblocked and they will recall. But if I touch a parameter and make it red, then that parameter will not be recalled by a scene. So it's filtered out of your scene recall. So as you can see, I've got categories along the left for inputs, mixes, effect units, etc. And then that shows me the subcategories in here. So it's very common that you would want to exclude a channel from scene recall. So say you want to do scenes from song to song, but you don't want anything to change with the lead vocal or the pastor mic because you're going to be constantly changing that, and you want to just maintain live control over that, and you don't want to change with a scene. So that's very simple. All we need to do is go in and find the lead vocal. In this particular show, it's going to be here in the vocal center. So I've got the channel along the side, and I could very easily just do this and block that entire channel. So that's blocked every parameter on that channel from scene recall. But I could get a little more detailed with it. If I wanted to, have level changes but not change the EQ, then I could open up processing, and I could find the parametric EQ within the processing and just block that. I could also add the compressor. I could add the trim. If I was using analog input, I would have the ability to block the preamp, but because I'm feeding over digital, there is no preamp. So I can pick and choose the exact parameters that I want to block on individual channels. So that makes it quite simple to remove someone from scene recall. And there's, I can do this for as many channels as I want. I could do it for all the vocals, or I could do it for the vocals and the hi-hat if you really needed to do that for some reason. So within processing, I've got all of the channel processing, and then in addition to processing, I can change the mute, the level, which is the position of the main channel fader. So that is the send to the main bus and to any pre-fader, to any post-fader sends. The main on is the assignment to the main bus. Panning is obviously panning. Routing is the sends to every bus besides the mains. So group membership, auxiliary send levels with their panning, effects send levels, mix send levels, matrix levels, and we also have direct outs, the assignment to the IEM or wedge section of the PAFL. You've got name and color, and then DCA and mute group assignments. You can choose its assignments to individual DCAs and individual mute groups. So as you can see, it's very granular. But please don't be intimidated by it. It really is, you just have to think through what parameters you want to recall and what you don't, and you can block them very simply. So that's on an input. We have very similar control over mixes or our buses, so we can do the same thing. For example, if you wanted to have a scene that changed the level of a guitar to someone's in-ear mix, you could do that very simply. You can do it in inputs as well in the routing, but I'll show it to you in mixes. So someone's ear mix is probably going to be in a stereo aux, so I'd find that here. We'll call it stereo aux 2, and then I'm going to open up routing, and because we're looking for a guitar, it's under inputs, and it's going to be under here, and there is guitar 4. So under guitar 4, I can choose to have just the routing of the one instrument to the one bus. But because I'm going to be doing limited things, I'm going to start with this block all up here. And so by hitting block all, that's going to block every parameter. So now this scene will recall nothing if I were to save it this way. But once I put on block all, then I can go through and pick individual parameters that I want to open for recall. So now I just choose guitar 4 to stereo aux 2, And now the only thing that this scene will recall is the send level of guitar 4 to stereo aux 2. So you can get very limited the other way. By starting with allow all, you can limit singular parameters from being recalled. And starting with block all, I can move into doing just very specific tasks. For example, I could do block all and I could go down to other, and I could change my strip assignments. So it's very common that you've got things changing during the performance and you've got a lot of channels laid out on your surface. You're not likely to have one setup that's going to be the most efficient workflow for every part of the performance. And we all know how easy it is to do drag and drop fader assignments to assign a particular input channel to a particular control strip. So we can set up different scenarios by just dragging and dropping down channels where we want them, save it as a scene, filter that scene by hitting block all so that all are blocked, and then I can release strip assignments. I can do all strip assigns, so that would be the configuration of the entire surface, or I could do just the center bank if I wanted to. I could allow just the center bank to change based on who or what is on stage at any given time. I can also include soft keys in this. So maybe you need a lot of different soft key functionality depending on what's going on in the show. So if I choose the soft keys here, each individual soft key I can change its function. So in the first part of a performance, soft key number 1 could be the all mute that opens up all the channels for the beginning of the show. And then for the second part of the performance, soft key 1 could be a mute for a group of channels that is feeding an effect unit, or there's no limits on what you could do with that. So you can get very creative. It essentially gives you more soft keys. You could even have a scene that changes the soft keys in banks. So 26 soft keys is a lot, but if you need more, you could use, for example, soft keys 1. So you could leave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 blocked, and then open up 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way down through 26. And you could use soft keys 1 through 5 to recall banks of the other 21 soft keys. So I would have a scene recalled by soft key 1 that gave me 21 specific soft keys. And then I had a scene recalled by soft key 2 that gave me a different 21 soft keys, and so on and so forth. So you can get banks of soft keys, much like you have banks of channel faders on your soft keys by using scene recalls. So there are so many different things that you can do by creatively assigning these. One example that I like to give is to use soft key assignments along with strip assign scenes to reconfigure a console for doing front of house and monitors on the same console, on the same surface. So you would start by duplicating your channels. So I would go into my surface assignment and I would take, say, channels 1 through 64, and I would set those up for front of house. I would, label them however I wanted for front of house, and then I would drag those 64 channels down onto the surface however I wanted to see them for my work as a front of house engineer. I would then go into scenes. Let me get out of the filters here. I would go into scenes, and I would save a scene, store, and I would name it FOH. Then I would go back into my strip assigns, and I would allocate channels 65 through 128, say. I would patch the same inputs that I did through channels 1 through 64. So I basically have a duplicate of those, but with separate EQ, separate compression, separate sends, so on and so forth. and I would drag those onto the surface as I would like to see them for control of the monitors. I would add in the monitor bus master faders, things like that. So basically, I'm setting it up now, my fader layout, as a monitor console. And then I would go back into scenes and I would store a scene and call it monitors. Now I've got 2 scenes. I've got to hit store. And I'm going to do the same recall filter on both of these. So I will go into recall filter. I'm going to do block all. And then I'm going to go into other as we did before and release the strip assignments. So now this scene is only going to change the layout of the faders on the surface, nothing else. No audio, no mix sends, no nothing. And then I hit apply. I've got that filter on front of house, but I also want it on monitors. So I'm going to do copy filter 2. I'm going to touch monitors and hit apply. And now I've copied it to that. So now I have these front of house and monitor scenes filtered so that they only change the layout of faders on the surface. I will then go into my soft keys and I will set my soft keys to do a function called select mix PAFL scene. And for my first one, I'm going to set it to be the mains. And so that's my main bus. And I'm going to set my scene to be front of house. So then I'm going to go for my second and third, fourth, so on soft keys. I'm going to set those to also select mix PFL scene. And I'm going to choose probably a stereo aux for in-ears. It'd be mono aux if they were wedges. And I'm going to set the scene to monitors. So now I would do that for, for soft key 3, I would do that for my next monitor mix, and soft key 4 for my next monitor mix. So they basically have one soft key for front of house set to the front of house scene. And I have however many, 5, 8, 10 soft keys for individual auxes going to monitors that are set to recall the monitor scene. So once I've done that, I can press soft key 1. It puts me sends on faders to my main mix, and I have my front of house layout in front of me. If I need to go and do monitors, someone asks for something, I push soft key 2. Not only does it put the mix sends on faders, but it brings me only the monitor channel so I don't get confused and push up the front of house kick drum into a monitor mix. It completely changes my workflow so that I'm just looking at monitors. And when I'm done and I'm ready to go back to my house mix, I just push soft key 1 again and I'm back to my house mix. It's a very effective way to divide your workflow based on filtered scenes. So I did have someone ask me recently about a different way of doing channel libraries. So you can do the same thing. Channel libraries are great for doing most things, but they don't include name and color, for example. Most cases you probably wouldn't want name and color included, but you could make scenes that are just to recall one specific channel, its name, its color, and all of its settings. So if I go in and I dial in a vocal, for example, for one of the singers that could be there on any given day, and I store that scene and I name it Diane, we're going with the D names today, I guess, and I'm going to go in and filter that. So again, I'm going to do block all because I want to do specific limited number of tasks. And I'm going to go in and find the microphone. Let's say that Diane is normally on the center vocal. So I'm going to release the processing and the routing and the name and color for this Diane mic. Now, when I hit apply, I get that filter on there. And when I recall this, it's going to bring up all of the appropriate settings, including Diane's name and whatever color I've set for Diane, onto that specific mic channel. So I could go on and on and on with examples for these. Does anyone have any questions or specific scenarios for scene recalls that they would like me to address? Because otherwise I could be here all day going through different applications for these. So I would love to see some specific uses for these that anyone's curious about. Or if you have any questions about scene recalls in general. Don't all rush at once. I know it always takes a minute to open the door to questions. There we go. There's a question. All right, Les, how do we remove a recall filter? So as I said, the recall filter is basically an overlay. If I want to remove it, I just go back into recall filter and I hit allow all, and that takes away all of the skittles. I hit apply, and then as you can see, the blue funnel is gone and I have removed that filter. So the only way to add, modify, or remove a recall filter is within the recall filter page. Great question. Who else has got something? Okay, well, if we're not going to have any more questions, then I'm going to let you all have a great day. I will leave the chat open for a minute in case people want to add questions. But otherwise, thanks so much for checking in and learning a little bit about scenes in DLive and Avantis, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Hey, this is William. How you doing?
Hey, William, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I came in a few minutes late, so I don't know if you covered it, but how does this, how is this different on SQ, or is that not part of our topic today?
I will answer the question, but it's not part of the topic today. SQ is very similar in the way that it works, but you have much less granularity in the filtering in SQ. So the concept is identical. You would save a scene and then you can block certain parameters from being recalled. You just have a much smaller recall section. So if we look here, as we saw in the recall filter section, on DLive and Avantis, which is what we're covering today, I basically have the ability to block or allow every single parameter on every bus and channel individually. In SQ, you're limited to just doing blocks of parameters, so specific groups of things that can be recalled. And if you go, it's the same thing. If you go into the scene filters in SQ, you will see what you are able to define as blocked or allowed. But it's not nearly as granular as what you see here.
Okay. I hadn't used filters much, but I didn't get the concept that the filter was actually stored in the scene.
It is not stored in the scene. The filter is not stored in the scene. The filter is an overlay over the top of the scene data. So changing the scene data does not affect the filter, and changing the filter does not affect the scene data. So it's an overlay that's put on top, and basically you have your data, and then when you try to recall it, it passes through the filter and is limited there. The data is not removed or limited within the scene itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if I want to create a scene that when I recall it will only, let's say, give me, you know, a fader strip assignment, that's not stored in the scene. So I would have
put
to
the filter on top of the scene. So that's you add the filter to the scene.
But the filter, then there's only one filter.
You can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that on an SQ. You can only do that on a DLive or an Avantis.
Oh, okay. Because then really you're constantly having to go back to your filters, play with them, and then recall the scene, which is really.
If you wanted to get that kind of functionality on an SQ, yes, you would. As I said, the scene system is not nearly as sophisticated in an SQ as it is on an Avantis. It's just one of those features that doesn't make it in that range of consoles, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem at all. Yes, this is recorded. If you send me an email, I did email you your invite this morning. So if you send me an email, I can send you a link to the video once it is uploaded. Any last questions? Okay, everyone.